5:31 at 6 o'clock on November 3rd. Attendance roll call, please.
Lisa. Here. Jeremy.
Here.
Kelly. Here. Nadia. Here. David.
Here.
Carrie's here. Alicia is
Absent.
Okay.
All right, vision, Byron Public Schools, a community of learners committed to making the world a better place. Mission, learn, share, innovate, inspire. And priorities are to personalize learning in the pursuit of academic excellence, inspire students and staff to develop their character, share their talents and apply their learning, and maintain excellence in resource management. Do we have any questions or discussion on the agenda items as presented?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We will invite Mr. Swanson from the middle school up for a presentation. Hello.
Nate, you want me to drive?
Sure.
Oh, I just need the mouse.
Oh, mouse, okay.
Perfect.
I'm gonna warn, it's kind of a finicky mouse.
Kind of finicky.
It requires advanced certification.
Perfect. I put a few things on here for you to peek at. Obviously, our district operation plan work, but I really wanted to just highlight a couple rather than click through everything. So the walkthrough playbook, this is something that's been evolving for a couple years. But it's been a really fun project to see where it's going. So state statute requires that all teachers go through 3 peer observations every year. So what we did 2-3 years ago is we created what we call an instructional playbook. And it was our way of meeting state statute, but also then hopefully morphing our instructional pedagogy into something that checks multiple boxes. So it's been really fun watching how this has actually turned out. So middle school staff every year throw 1 or 2 slides on the slideshow on this playbook. And what it's tied to, it can be tied to their action research. It can be tied to just an instructional practice they want feedback on as a teacher. And then what we do first, second, and third quarter, every teacher has to go observe somebody, a teammate, based on the playbook. So the teachers will go through this playbook. They'll find an instructional strategy that piques their interest. Maybe it's I'll give you an example here, like 15 to 16 is our 6th grade English teachers. And what's interesting about these is so you have 6th grade English, what they basically say, they want to create a discussion protocol because what they're seeing is how do we get kids engaged in true discussion in our classroom. So they use a protocol tied to some culturally responsive training that we've done in the building. They say this is a strategy we're going to try first quarter, maybe second quarter, third quarter. Teachers, let's say I'm teaching in the building and I'm saying, man, I really want to add some discussion tools to my box in my classroom. I dig through the slideshow, I come across this one, I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm going to contact the 2 English teachers and be like, when are you doing this in your room? I read through their slideshow, see what the gist of it is. It's a protocol I'd like to try, at least see. I go into their room, there's a form that I'll fill out, and the form actually gives them feedback on their strategy. So there's like a I wonder, I like prompt that the teacher, me, observing them at the time, would give them feedback on. And then at the very end of that form, there's a reflection that says, how would I use this in my room? That all comes back to the site team, so we can monitor who is going to see other people. We also want to make sure everybody gets observed. And then it also sends an email to the teacher that was observed. So in this case, I'd be sending an email to Kara and Paul, giving them feedback about their instructional strategy, how I might use it in my room, which could further more discussion. The things we've seen of this in a couple of years is the teachers really like the PD opportunity. And I've always been a principal that says the vast majority of real good PD happens in our own building. So when you can get teachers opportunity to go visit other classrooms right across the hall, so we've built it into our system. We say that, hey, instead of using team time to meet as a team this day, use that 30 minutes anytime in this first quarter to go find a teacher you want to see a playbook strategy from. it's been really fun to watch them start to break down some walls, because we all know that in middle schools and high schools, you can get grade level or subject matter specific even. And you might not even know what the art teacher does in her classroom, but she could be doing some world-changing strategy, right, with the kids that would benefit your math classroom. You just don't have the ability to go see that. Well, now we have the ability to go see that. So it's homegrown instructional pedagogy, professional development from your own peers, feedback from your own peers, which is even better because they know what you're doing. They know the kids you're working with. And it's kind of created a breakdown of some of those silos across the building. So that one's really cool. Nate, you want to hit escape?
Escape.
Thanks. So that one has actually been, really fun to watch. So you can go through some of those slides and see some of the strategies, anyways, that we use across the building. Let's see. If
I think yours is the second to last
get
tab.
this mouse to move. You said
I'm
it's
telling
finicky.
you.
You said it's finicky.
Yeah, it's not great.
Richard,
Oh.
do they only use this at the middle school then?
Yes,
It's not a-
this is a
okay.
middle school strategy we put in place, trying to always, say the system. Wow, Nate. We're gonna invest.
I'm smarter than I look.
Put in a work order.
Put it in a work order.
Yeah. Come down. No. Nate, this is like you're testing me.
Yeah.
Like I feel like.
How do you act under pressure,
I feel like
Swanson?
I feel like I'm being tested.
Okay.
There we go, look at that. We'll stop. I won't move the mouse. Yes, it is a strategy we're using at the middle school. Malia has a similar playbook at the high school, and that they've done a little bit different than us. But this one has been a couple years in the making, and I really wanted to just highlight how fun we're having at the middle school, learning from each other. And it's a way to see what's going on and help people team up across the building. Last one I wanted to highlight for y'all before you can ask me questions about anything, Veterans Day breakfast. That's coming up here next week. It's been about 7 or 8 years, but it's a highlight every year, and I want to make sure the board knows this is just a cool opportunity where we're connecting with our community. Student Council for the past 7 or 8 years has been going. We get bused to the International Event Center in Rochester. All of the area veterans come to that breakfast at the International Event Center. When it first started, it was just kind of a, hey, let's try this out and see how it works. Well, now we get taken care of like royalty, which is not the point, right? We always try to help them understand like we're here because we want to be. But I'm telling you, the veterans have taken to our kids in a pretty cool way. So our 6th graders do a veterans letter writing assignment. And actually it's great, it's part of our curriculum. So the 6th graders will write about 300-400 letters. We take them with us, and all the veterans over at the International Event Center have round tables where they sit at. We get there and they feed our kids breakfast. And then our kids go around and they drop mail call, like you would if you were a veteran back in the day. They drop mail call on the table, and veterans each get a letter or two that they can open up at their table at breakfast, and that's just fun to see. But after our kids are done eating, they go and start serving coffee, serving juice, taking dishes, dirty dishes to the dish bin. And then the program starts about 10 o'clock. And that's when our kids, for the last several years, it's crazy, because it's not the point, but the veterans will actually clap them out of the building.
Aww.
And we try to get them every year not to do it, but because it's not about us, it's about our appreciation for you. But they just love having our kids, and every year they call me and say, hey, are you coming this year? I said, absolutely, we're coming. So our kids will be going over there. Some of the byproducts we get out of this deal is you'll see veterans write our kids back, and they become pen pals for the year in our English classrooms. And it's really neat. So you'll see veterans send pictures of when they were, in the military. And it's even great because that'll pass from our English teachers to our social studies classrooms. And you just get this pen pal connection back and forth where you're getting real learning from community members. So super fun. Looking forward to it every year. We take our student council for, I think it's 7 or 8 years now. So fun activity. We will also now do a veterans program, in case any of you want to stop by. It's the 12th, it's the day after Veterans Day, from 8 to 8:30 in the auditorium. So Mr. Blum, when he was in the intermediate school, put together a short veterans program every year. Well, now that I've snagged him, he's like, hey, let's run that here. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So our local veterans from our own Legion will be joining us in the auditorium from 8 to 8:30 on the 12th. A couple ways that we try to connect with the community in certain ways. Anything else? Questions from you all about what's going on at the middle school? Time's flying by. We're having a great year.
It's awesome. I just want to say thank you for doing such an amazing job.
Oh.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I love it. You'll see a newsletter come out this week. I did kind of push into the parent community a little bit, asking for some partnership with some recent survey data and some things that are a bit concerning, mental health wise and friendship wise, trying to engage the parents in, hey, let's partner together in some of this work. And for me, I try to just say, hey, this is how we, from a parent perspective, this is how you can help in some of these arenas. Here's what we do. Here's what I'd love to see parents partner with the school to also deal with. So some of that is, I'll share more about some of that data that's coming out of some of these surveys, but I want to look at it as in a holistic way. It's not just mental health. There's a lot of other things that play into that, right? So for instance, I'll just give you the quick data, like 7 to 9 hours is the average amount of time our kids are on their screens a day on social media. Teenagers. So does that play a role in mental health? Absolutely. So trying to help students in middle school understand that, but also asking the parents, like, how can we engage with that differently? Because sometimes we're not even better examples. So it's really trying to engage the whole team, but look at it from a broader perspective than just say, we have mental health issues, let's look at all facets of what that can even mean. So more to come on that one, but we're working on it. Have some cool things going on at the middle school to help educate kids and how to handle some of that stuff. So, yeah. Any questions ever come up? Always there.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Franklin. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we'll pass it on to our MCA presentation.
Okay. This chart can be a little overwhelming. I just kind of wanted to explain what was happening. You have the grade level across the top row here, and you have the year of the administration taking place on column A. And so I've color coded the class as they move down in grade or move across in grades. So for example, all of these white shaded cells, this is the same set of kids over time. This gray shade, that's the same set of kids over time. Everyone with me so far? Okay. So, our most recent year is obviously the 2025 administration of the MCA exam. And you can see those proficiency results. I would highlight, I believe it was with the it was either with the 2022 or the 2023 that there was a major change in the MCA, and the trend because of that change resulted in lower proficiency numbers than were historically the case. And that change was really a Pearson, which is the company that owns the MCAs, as they were trying to better align the questions with the standards that folks were expecting to see. Across the state, districts saw proficiency levels drop. So, anyway, this is the math proficiency. The next one I'll show you is the reading proficiency. It's the same idea chart, but just dealing with reading instead. The other thing I forgot to highlight was the year 2020. That's the COVID year when the MCA was not administered. And then the last one is the science proficiency. And Unlike math and reading, science is only administered in the 5th, 8th, and usually 10th grade class, but the real metric on science proficiency or the science MCA is the year that the students take biology. And it's usually the 10th grade year, but it's not always the case. The other workbooks I didn't open were just the percentile ranks, which this is really where I think you end up being able to highlight just how well Byron academics are compared to their neighbors and the whole state, I should say. This is when you get into these percentile ranks. I mean, I've worked in quite a few school districts at this point. I've never seen numbers anywhere near this before in a really great way. I mean, this number here is just jaw-dropping. 10th grade science, we're in the almost the 99th percentile of the state. Any questions?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. I feel it my duty to just again acknowledge that the MCA is a useful exam in some respects. This absolutely should not be the way that we use to evaluate, take and be like, hey, we've got some really good numbers. That means everything Byron does is amazing and awesome. Just like on the flip side, if the numbers were the reverse, we wouldn't say, well, this means that Byron is the worst place on earth. But it is one of the metrics that we can use to evaluate some of the things that are happening in our district. So, okay. If you do end up walking through this and you have other questions, feel free just to reach out to me. No big deal.
All right. Moving on to comprehensive achievement and civic readiness report.
This used to be known, this was the report formerly known as the World's Best Workforce, which I would argue comes off the tongue a little bit better than comprehensive achievement and civic readiness. Anyway, this is a yearly report required to be distributed and presented before school boards across every Minnesota district. That really centers on 5 goals: that all children are ready for school. That's generally a pre-kindergarten metric. That all racial and economic achievement gaps are closed, so districts have some latitude as to where you focus there. And then that all students are ready for career and college, and all students graduate from high school are generally high school metrics. And then all students are prepared to be lifelong learners. That was not a goal in the World's Best Workforce, but that is a new one to the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report. Okay, and then I submit this report to MDE as part of our accountability. So goal number 1, we set that we would maintain 95% or greater of all students enrolled in preschool, that they'll meet all 6 of the end of year expectations as measured by the widely held expectations report, and that they would be then considered kindergarten ready. So that widely held expectations report, that's an assessment that the preschool teachers do to all the students that are in their classes, and it's one of the things that they take into account when determining if a student's ready for kindergarten or not. So I have historic results, and then I have the 2025 results. It's important to note that unlike every year before it, during the 2025 screening period, they also included 3-year-olds. So we do see a drop in that percentage, but they're attempting to transition to a different assessment this spring that they feel does a better job of accounting for kindergarten readiness. And they wanted to be able to assess the 3-year-olds to be able to compare data between this year and then, or last year and then this year. So normally they wouldn't have included 3-year-olds, but they did because they're transitioning to a different system. Goal 2 is closing the achievement gap. We'll increase the number of special education students who meet or exceed proficiency in reading by 5% or more, as measured by the 2025 MCA reading assessment. And this one is unfortunately a goal that we did not achieve, where you see a drop in reading proficiency instead of an increase of 5%. There's a decrease of 7%. We also elected to increase the proficiency of free and low-income students by 5% or more. This one was really close to being achieved, not quite. And then we'll increase the number of minority students who meet or exceed proficiency in reading by 5% or more. And that goal we did not achieve.
Those goals set by us as the district, or are they set by the city?
Yes, usually the leadership team, and usually the leadership team is getting, that's what their site goal or their building goal would be. And so these are normally set by the leadership team of the district, but every building's site leadership team has a hand in it as well.
You know, historically, have we met the goal that we achieved?
I can look.
Set out.
I can look back on what the previous reports are, because the folder I have, it just has like one of these presentations for every year. And so I see the results, but I don't see what the goal was for each year. So I could look back and see what the goal passage rate happens to be.
I would be curious, just looking at the way the numbers are currently up there, why 5% was thought to be an achievable goal. That's just looking at it from my perspective.
Yeah, usually the 5% is, and the term statistically significant is, in order to determine if something's statistically significant requires quite a bit of math. The general average is, if you, somewhere between 3 and 5% improvement is a statistically significant one. So I wasn't here, so I don't know why they would set it that way, but in my mind, a 5% increase on those things doesn't seem like that's out of order, if that makes any sense at all. But I could absolutely look back and see what the goal setting has been. Okay. Goal 3 is college and career readiness. By the spring of 2025, 40% of all students assessed will have met the career and college readiness benchmarks in all 4 subject areas as measured by the ACT. So there are 4 areas of testing in the ACT, and what essentially that's saying is that there's a cut score, and that the goal is that 40% of the students will achieve that cut score in all 4 areas of the ACT. That makes sense. So, in 2025, we did not meet that goal, and it looks like at least it's been a minute since we've been at that rate.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. I was just noticing that.
Yeah, I would argue how that goal got.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Place
let's not eat an elephant all at once.
Right, you've got to make a goal achievable, and that just doesn't seem, I know we want it, but.
Yeah. Maintain at or above 98% of eligible Byron High School students will be receiving a diploma, as measured by the 2025 graduation. They have not released the grad rate numbers yet. You may think that's a pretty silly number. You should be able to add that. It gets complex because there are some kids, right, that are graduating and have met all of those requirements the night of graduation. But then there's another set of kids that you also fold into that number that basically get through June, and that if they acquire the credits by June, they're included in that number. And then there's a third set of kids that if they get it in July or August, they are folded in a weighted way into that number. And then you have the last group, which you wait 1 year into the future. And so they haven't released the ones that graduate in June and then complete in July and August yet. That's the number we're waiting for. And then most people don't really pay attention to the 5-year cohort, which is the kids that take another year to graduate, if that makes sense. So we're just waiting on that number. You can go to the MDE report card and you just type in Byron High School, and it's literally the first graph or report that comes up. So.
And also would be great to see how this compares to our neighbors.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last goal is that by the spring of 2025, all seniors will have successfully completed and presented their profile of a graduate life plan. And this is tied to our profile of a graduate chart that we have behind us here, and that all of the seniors, they create a life plan throughout their time at the high school, and then at the end of their senior year, they create this presentation where they walk through what they've looked at and the pathways and kind of their next steps. So this is a goal that we have met. All of the seniors did successfully present their profile of a graduate life plan. All right, any questions? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Into the A&I report, Achievement and Integration.
Achievement Integration is a grant that goes on a 3-year cycle, and we qualify for this grant because we border a racially isolated district. In this case, that would be Rochester. And any district that borders Rochester or any other racially isolated district, you qualify for this grant, and the idea behind it is that this provides additional revenue for the district to increase achievement, as time goes on, it's more likely than not that minority students are going to find their way into the districts that are all around the racially isolated district. But then also, there's a push by MDE to have these other districts that aren't racially isolated integrate and participate in activities in collaboration with the racially isolated district. A lot of corporate buzzwords in there, I apologize for that, but that's kind of the quickest way to explain it. So the district drafts a plan for 3 years, and this is the third of our 3 years. So in the spring, I'll be putting together, assuming the Achievement Integration Grant is still a thing, which it will be, I'll be putting together a new set of plans for the next 3 years, so that then we can qualify for that additional funding and services. So goal number 1, centered on staff development, and it read, by 2026, 100% of Byron certified staff engage, participate, and network with the adjoining district and study culturally responsive and trauma-informed practices. So in 2024, all staff did complete trauma-informed practice training, and all of those evaluated staff were marked proficient in culturally responsive practices on the Marzano tool. In 2025, all evaluated staff were marked proficient in the culturally responsive practices on the Marzano tool. And for this year, 2026, we do have culturally responsive training planned for the staff workday on January 19th. So we anticipate completing that goal. Goal number 2 is that by the spring of each year, reading proficiency for free and reduced price lunch students will increase by 2%. Grades K through 2 will be measured using the FastBridge assessment, and grades 3 through 5 will be measured using the reading MCA. So I have the grades in the first column here, and then I have each year sorted by columns. you see what the goal is and then what was actually achieved.
So how do they test them separately?
So grades K through 2 don't take the reading MCA. The MCA begins in grade 3. And so that they wanted there to be some way to measure reading progression. And at the time, so this would have been 3 years ago, that was when FastBridge would have first been getting implemented across the elementary level specifically. I don't know if here you implemented it in the middle school, but some districts went as high as middle school, but everybody did K through 5 or K through 6, depending on how you sorted your elementaries. So this would have been the only assessment available to measure reading progression in grades K through 2.
Okay, but I'm just wondering how do they pull out the free and reduced students? How do they know, how do they set them apart, their test scores apart from the rest of the population?
So in the student management system, you both FastBridge and your MCA results are all tied to individual kids in Infinite Campus. And then on the other side, and this isn't the side that the instructional staff see, is students that do qualify for free and reduced lunch are also flagged. And so then when we pull down the reports, we can sort them by free and reduced. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering that, how they were tested separately or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. Any other questions here? Okay. Goal number 3 is career readiness. Byron will increase participation from 25 to 50% of underserved student groups in Byron Career Pathway Programming and or at Rochester C-Tech programming. There weren't any results that I could find from 2023, unfortunately. But in 2024, all underserved student groups, and generally when we're talking about underserved, you're talking about students that have a disability, students that speak English as a second language, minority students, or students that are free reduced lunch. That's generally what it means. It wasn't clear in the information I grabbed if that was exactly what they meant here, but it's what it seems to me. And then in 2025, which would have been last year, all underserved student groups participate in at least one class in one of the Byron career pathways. So this one, they do have a really great way to send kids into those pathways. Okay, any questions about achievement and integration? From a strategic standpoint, the timing of this is going to work out well. When we set achievement integration goals, I'm going to be setting those goals to align directly with the comprehensive achievement and civic readiness goals, and also to align with our soon-to-come strategic goals, so that there aren't like 50 million disparate goals flying all over the place, that all the goals are in alignment with each other, and even if they aren't the exact same things, they're at least feeding into each other, if that makes some sense. So there's less things for me to remember, and there for everybody to not have to remember all those things too.
All right, take our first reading of policy, starting with 701.1.
Okay, let me see here. So, this is one of Sean's favorite subjects, is the revised budget and the ways in which we modify it. This is boilerplate, I shouldn't say boilerplate, that's not the right way to describe it, but this is templated language that is reviewed and restated and confirmed by MSBA.
Any questions or discussion on this policy? All right, we'll move on. Policy 710. Extracurricular transportation. And I guess we should have said there's no recommended changes from MSBA.
Correct. No, not on these ones. I think the biggest one to highlight just for the public is that it's not within our policies for employees to provide students with transportation in their personal vehicles, just as a measure of safety and security for all. So,
Any further questions or discussion on policy 710? We'll move on to 703, the annual audit.
This is just falling in line with state requirements that we do an audit on an annual basis using a third party, and that this audit company works in concert with our business services, but then also creates a report independent of the business services for you, the school board, to review and to make public. I have never looked more forward to an audit report than this one, and we're just waiting for the details.
Any other questions? Move on to 711, video recording on school buses.
This is very similar to our language regarding video surveillance, or video recording is what I should say, in the schools. School buses are generally considered a part of the classroom and school property.
Okay, any questions on 711? Move on to 712. Video recording other than on buses. A few updates here.
So this is the one that I provided you an update on. The major update being that we do use video recording in common areas, but that we will not be using, we do not use video recording in bathrooms or locker rooms.
So why the change from surveillance to recording?
I think surveillance has a more it has the connotation that you're watching, that you're watching guilt or something terrible or devious happen.
Okay.
And that changing over to recording is just that you're sitting there monitoring the situation, and more often than not, there's not going to be anything that happens.
So it's not connected with saving the videos and like storing them for like certain number of whatever the policy is?
Yes, so this video is recorded for and held on by our server for a certain period of time, and I think most districts have it in their policy that it's 30 days or 45 days. I don't recall off the top of my head what our number is. And really the number is more a function of the size of our server and and the definition of our system, as opposed to it being that number of days, if that makes sense.
Right. So we do not, the recording or the videos from bathrooms and locker rooms are not saved to our server.
No, but we don't have any video recordings of
Okay,
any bathrooms
perfect.
or locker
Yeah.
rooms, period. But we do have videos, for example, in like the high school commons. Well, it's recording video right now, and that video that it's recording tonight would still be available for somebody to download and review 2 weeks from now. Yeah.
It does say, although these areas may be monitored by individuals of same sex as the occupants of bathrooms or locker rooms.
Yeah.
So they're not recorded, it's just.
Yeah,
monitored by a
and the intent, the way that this plays out realistically inside of the school environment is, let's say I was the principal of the high school, and I kept hearing that something strange was happening in the boys' bathroom in the main hallway. This policy does provide the administration and school officials with the authority to have an adult monitor that bathroom directly, as we try and stamp out, if kids are vaping in there or if they're taking weird videos or whatever else happens in the bathroom that's not supposed to happen in a bathroom.
Is there a reason that we say will normally not be used in bathrooms instead of saying that we are not going to be recording?
Yeah, and I think that idea was a throwback to the previous language that's X'd out down below. Oh, my mouse, I'm gonna just leave it alone. I don't understand functionally why they wouldn't have crossed that one out either. I don't, because you're then saying in the next sentence, right, that, or not, the next clause, these areas might be monitored by individuals of the same sex as the occupants of the bathrooms or the locker rooms. I'm just trying to think of a situation in which,
Yeah, 'cause it seems like that should just be taken out. Video recording will not be used in
The fight
bathrooms.
breaks out in the middle of the bathroom and a teacher goes in, pulls their phone out to video it.
well, let's be honest, you just get it off of TikTok and Instagram from all the teenagers that were posted on there anyways. Anyway, that's almost what I'm wondering, is that if you were able to capture the video from another source, if you didn't have the normally, the district might not be able to use that video if they were trying to square something away. But I could ask about that. Why normally would still be, what would be a hypothetical, why you'd leave it in there like that?
Yeah, it does give wiggle room, which maybe that's what we're supposed to have.
But does it give too much wiggle room?
Right, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you ask what
Mhm.
MSB warning or whatever?
Okay.
Great questions. Any other questions on policy 712? Move on to 601, school district curriculum and instructional goals.
So this policy ends up guiding, ironically enough, the types of goals that I just walked you through. So you are giving authority to school district staff and leadership to set goals. But then you're also asking for reports, like on this page, the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness report, and other reports as you oversee and govern the district.
Oh, is there a typo under section 3, definition, letter D, where it says, close the academic achievement gap among all radical and
Oh,
ethnic
yeah.
groups? Is it racial?
Should be racial.
Okay.
Good catch.
What was that? It says radical, right?
Yep. What, D?
Okay.
All right, any other questions on policy 601? Move on to our final policy, 202.1. Student representative on the school board.
All right, this is a thing that has caused a little bit of controversy across the state of Minnesota as to what this should mean. If we elect to put a student representative on the school board, they don't. Their intended purpose is not necessarily a vote on these issues. It's rather intended to give students an opportunity to share their perspective through that representative. I want you to know that I have already started working with the high school student council to create a mechanism that accomplishes the same goal. It doesn't necessarily mean, at least the direction they are thinking about heading, it doesn't necessarily mean that at each school board meeting there's one person that comes up and gives you a report, but rather, I think they are stepping on something that is significantly more meaningful, which is based on strategic goals that are happening across the district. they will seek input from the students and give you insight into how the students are seeing or not seeing that strategic goal roll out. So, but at any rate, this is still a policy that MSBA recommends that we have, just that it puts some constraints around if you do have a student school board member, that there are some rules and there are some expectations that go with them that don't make them a bona fide school board member, but just more they're there to represent the student voice and give you some perspective from them.
I know we had talked about this in the past,
Yeah.
and students are not interested.
At that time, nobody was interested in, yep.
My experience with this is that a lot of times it defaults to like the president of the student council or the vice president of student council, and you get an activities report from the high school when they do come on the board, which is fine. But the challenge that the student council leadership and I are trying to navigate is how can you get insight as to not just what the student council members are feeling and experiencing, but how can you get experience and insight into what as many different parts of the student body are experiencing. And so that's where the discussion is headed, and they were thinking about, as opposed to it happening once a month, that they come and tell you, that maybe they start slow and maybe it's twice a year, it grows into once a quarter, but they wanted to really think hard about how can we represent every student's perspective when they come to you to report to you about, here's what we're thinking about our school, if that makes sense. So I really like the direction that they're heading. I like the questions that they want to ask. And I also like their interest in giving you an accounting of the lives they're living in our schools. So my suggestion is, let's give this some time, and I'm hoping that in the coming months I'll have a really unique way of showing you, of the students showing you, I should say, what they think of our schools.
What does it mean from the procedure perspective, right? So this representative on the board, what type of a vote will they have? Like, what would that mean for us? I'm thinking of like a union representative, like a workers' union representative within the board. So.
Yeah. On this policy, this policy lines out that they don't really have any voting rights.
Okay.
They do come and they can participate in the meetings. They can voice an opinion, and they're kind of limited to that. In the event that there's like a sensitive employee matter and we end up closing the meeting, they don't participate in the closed meeting. More often than not, if I'm just saying it really to the point, if you want to drive kids away from participating in local government, you'll have them join up as a student council member on the school board. Just because they participate, but they don't, it's weird how they participate. And I think what the student council here at the high school and I, what we're trying to build is something that is meaningful, is interesting, and is helpful. So anyway, it won't look like this, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. So.
I like that you're working on something that makes sense for the whole student body and not just a report that just comes to us and we're like, thank you.
Yeah.
It's an interactive and engaging piece.
My goal is that it feels a lot like what Richard just did.
Yeah.
Is that they come and they say, here's what people are thinking, here's how we collected this information, maybe even some anecdotal video. I don't know. I don't want to put them in a box just by my own weird ideas. So.
Well, it almost says to me that that's another seed that they're working on and they're
Totally.
succeeding.
So will the how will the students self-select?
Well, that's the part of the story that I think is actually the most interesting, because the student council is a group that's been selected out of the high school, however they select them. I think, people apply? I'm looking over there, right? It's not, they don't vote for each other, they just apply in the same way you apply for a job, and then the council selects, or the advisors select. But the interesting part is the interesting challenge that they have to face is, if student council isn't representative of the entire population of Byron Public Schools, how do they collect the insight and the experience of those people who aren't represented? And how do they, how in your, with your question, Nadia, is how not only do they collect that information, but then how do they bring that to you in a respectful way so that you get insight into what is or is not happening at the school so that you can, you know, motivate me to push for a thing or not push for a thing and make a change. So it's giving me goosebumps kind of thinking about what the possibilities of this could be. But I want to do it right. The other thing to note is, generally speaking, kids on student council are among our more committed kids in that they're involved in lots of things. And the other part that I've noticed on this approach to student council representation is it ends up limiting some kids because, you know, they're in an activity or they're in a sport or they're working, and we don't get a consistent sort of herald or a messenger, if that makes sense. So.
And also technically, all the students can email us, right? With
Absolutely.
their concerns and questions. So
Yeah.
there is an open channel of communication. We just don't have anything present here, you know, in the formal way.
Yeah, that's true. So more work to be done on this one. Not policy-wise, but just,
Okay, all right. Any other questions, or we'll move on to reviewing the model policy updates?
this just provides a summary of the updates. Some of these are just technical, meaning they're removing a phrase. It doesn't really impact any meaning or processes. Others are more substantive in nature, and generally those are directed because of an agreement between the association, piece of legislation, or a court case that's been handed down. Anyway.
They were all, everybody was curious as to what was gonna happen with the student
She makes
council.
her sign.
Oh, don't make her stay.
No, you're
Go
good.
back to like this is self-selection process, right? Whoever's
Sounds like we got a representation.
I knew what was happening.
Just so you know, we are being recorded and everybody can watch this.
Lucky.
There you go.
All right, we'll move on to the Byron Superintendent Evaluation Process.
So, you'll recall this process, we talked through it in August, and one of the check-ins is pending, and so I wanted just to see with you if you would prefer to do a mid-year check-in on my goals, if you would prefer that to be the January work session, which is also our organizational meeting, or if you'd prefer to move that to the January board meeting. You could also do it, I mean, you can do it however you want. This was just the timeline I established, so.
Hey, can you please remind me when we have this meeting with, what is Deb, right?
Yes, it's in about 2 minutes from now, whenever we stop talking
Oh,
about
yes,
this.
right.
Yeah.
Right, it is today. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Would you rather have your eval done open or closed meeting? Does it matter to you?
it doesn't matter to me.
I think we've always done closed, right?
We've done them closed, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
You have the right either way.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say, I thought they had to be open. Didn't
the, when you talk about the specifics, you can
Yeah.
close them,
they? Okay.
yeah.
Maybe we should ask Deb about that, about her recommendation.
It-
Barb.
Barb.
Yep.
I don't think it matters which
I
one we
think
stick
Barb
it,
cares.
stick it a part of.
In terms of the, like, so, in terms of even like timing the half year review versus like an annual review, is that, or has that ever been the question?
No.
No, okay.
No, there's still an end of year review process that I start putting together in April,
Mhm.
and then it ends up culminating in May or June, depending on the timing of the days, but
I would think we just do it January, the first meeting, and it's timely, it gives you more opportunities for any change of direction, but also,
you're saying the work session?
mhm, that'd just be my thought, anybody else's thoughts?
Or do you do it the second one because there's a possibility of a new chair, and the chair is one that collects all the data?
What could all be collected in December?
Okay.
And they can go to the clerk and.
Well,
Sure,
on
that's the
this,
question.
on this one, the only real data that's provided is a report that I'm generating to you. The heavier lift happens in April and May, when you all get, you can choose to do some surveys. I know that Barb has some suggestions about some other things that you can do as well. She was, when she saw my process, she was like, I don't love the surveys for me. That's what she said. But anyways, you can decide if you wanted to wipe the survey off and go in a different direction, but I know she has a couple of ideas.
I think we've always done surveys, right? Every evaluation is what you're mentioning? Yeah.
And I'm asking because we have never done evaluations.
Yeah.
So this is a new process for the new.
That's okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think I mean, we'll just pencil it in on January, the work session. And then if you all want to change it, it's okay, especially after talking to Barb.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so Barb is going to join us, let's see.
Do we need to close and turn off the video?
It's an open meeting.
No. Yeah, it's open, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Wait a minute. Barb, we're ready for you.
She's good. Barb doesn't miss.
Great, can you hear me?
You bet.
Hello.
Hello, nice to see you. Thank you so much for allowing me to join virtually tonight, I appreciate it. As Nate has shared, and I'm sure you've seen, is our transition workshop. We do this with all of our clients, for superintendent search, and it's a matter of discussing the goals and expectations for this first year as your superintendent. Now, I know you've already approved some goals for Nate, and as a result, it's already, so I'm not have as much time needed as I might typically have during the workshop for transition. But I do want to do two things, if it's okay with the board. This will probably take a total of about a half hour maybe or so, but I also want to make sure that I've answered your questions. So I'll stay on as long as you need, right? But I want to first PowerPoint about superintendent evaluation, because really what we want to talk about is how will you evaluate Nate as your superintendent for this coming year. And I want to come to some agreements on that. And the PowerPoint is just some foundational information. You might recognize some of the slides in MSB's other trainings as well, but that's one thing. And then the next thing I'd like to do is that booklet that you've distributed now that you all have. Just a couple of suggestions of how that might be incorporated into the goals that you've already set for Nate for his first year at the helm of Byron Public Schools. So those are the two things. I'm thinking maybe a half hour, but is there anything anyone else wants to talk about tonight, or any questions on what I just laid out that we're going to be doing here? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. And I believe I see the PowerPoint up. The state transition workshop, I can't read that from you.
Yes, sorry, here we go.
Yep. I don't have the PowerPoint in front of me, but I know Ann is probably sharing it for me, so I'll just talk based on what I see on the screen there. Please interrupt me if anyone has any questions as we go along, okay? So the first slide, just the transition workshop, and it's all about partnership between the school board and the superintendent. So we talked a lot about teams. Oh, great, thank you very much. A lot about working as a team. All high-performing districts have elected members of the board and a superintendent who's an ex officio member of the board. And by working together, you can set expectations about what you really need to accomplish in his first year. So we're going to talk teamwork. And then here, you'll recognize the secrets for school board leadership. One thing I should ask before I go any further, can you hear me okay, or are you hearing an echo? Because I'm hearing an echo, but I'm okay with it. How are you all?
Okay.
It's going good.
It's okay? All right. Okay. These are the 5 standards for leadership, and this is one of the things you'll recognize if you've been in our phase trainings. These are the 5 areas that school board members are expected to demonstrate competencies as you become a board member longer and longer and longer. But these are your 4 areas. Now, within them, there are some benchmarks around evaluating your superintendent. So, Anne, if you could hit, I think it's 3 times the buckets here. There we go. Thank you. Your conduct of ethics is reference standards about recognizing the board team consists of board members and superintendent, and you evaluate performance annually. So that could be as a board. I don't know if you've done a school board self-evaluation, but if you haven't, there's a free tool on MSBA's website that once you get past some of the craziness you're in right now with the election tomorrow, if you have time to take a breather, you could do a school board self-evaluation. And if you have questions on doing that, just let me know, and I can get you in touch with the person who can help you do that. But it is a free tool online. Also, under structure, it talks about selecting and employing one person, the superintendent, as the school district's CEO to lead and manage the school district. And then under accountability, it does say evaluate the superintendent's performance at least annually. Now, I want to mention that there's a requirement in statute that you do evaluate the superintendent. However, it's in our model contract. My guess is it might be in the contract that the district has with Nate if you use MSBA or MASA's model contract. But we really want to include the conversation around how is the performance going and how are you going to address areas that are going not so well as well as those that are going well. So next slide, which should be the superintendent scoring. So these are 8. These are the standards. Now, every single superintendent that has a license in the state of Minnesota must exhibit competencies in all 8 of these in order to even get a license. So when you look at these 2 lists of the cornerstones and the standards for school boards versus standards for superintendents, does anyone see a difference between those 2? Any indication of how they might be different? Because they are different.
There's no operations or anything on the school board side, whereas there are operations on the superintendent side.
Yep, correct. Thank you very much. So when you look at these, the school boards are far more visionary, more governance related, and the superintendents are the boots on the ground. That's where the work actually gets done. So different kind of standards for the 2 parts of the board. So this leads nicely into the next slide, which is the board governance system. You probably recognize this. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, student success right in the middle there. That is the heartbeat of every single school district. So that is most important, your student success. And I know every decision you make as school board members is about student success. When you look at this, the top in red, the school board governs. The bottom half in blue, superintendent manages. Now the fence across the middle there, that dotted fence, that we tell people you can simply look over into the other area of responsibility, but just don't leap over it because sometimes that creates some confusion about the roles and responsibilities of the board versus the superintendent. Now all of you on the board there, start right at the top and go clockwise. You establish things like the strategic plan, the parameters, expectations for the school district, and you also adopt some things. And often those things that you adopt come upon the recommendation from the superintendent. Adopting budget, policies, contracts, etc. You then as a board sort of hand it over the fence to the superintendent. And their job is to develop those things. They're going to take that from you and they'll develop plans, procedures, they develop staff. Staff ultimately report to the superintendent. Superintendent reports to you. And then they continue to implement things. One of the things most very common with things do not always work in reality, as well as we thought they might work in theory. So when Nate is implementing policies or procedures, plans, etc., he's going to be noticing some things that either are going really well or not so well. So he's monitoring all of those things in the management realm to be able to send back over the fence to you in order to evaluate those things. So then in the governance role, you might evaluate yourself as a board. You do evaluate the superintendent, but you'll also evaluate the outcomes that he has found and reported so that you can reestablish things as needed. And so it just keeps going through my motion, and I think working together can be highly and wholly effective. And I know you're familiar with this, and I know you're a governing board, and you're doing a really great job letting Nate run the district and providing the guidance he needs. And then superintendents are also told, please don't jump over the fence of the governance. You know, it's not the superintendent's job to set the direction where the district is going. That is the school board's job. So, any questions on the governance model? I know you see. Okay, now we'll go to the next slide. About goals and the red box is your strategic plan. So that is sort of 3 to 5 years out, maybe 3 to 5 really big goals. And the strategic plan drives everything, as I know you know in Byron. So the strategic plan will allow the goals that you should set as superintendent, and also if you want to set goals for yourself as a board in the green area. The biggest difference between the red box and then the green and blue boxes is green and blue boxes for the superintendent and you as a board, if you set goals, they're 1 year whole time. Just 1 year. Also, not very many. 2 to 3, 1 year at a time that are achievable and measurable are generally the way to go versus a strategic plan is a lot further out and more goals, 3 to 5. But the idea is that they are vertically aligned. So if you can take a look at all of the work that you're doing in the district and it's headed in this new direction vertically, then you're doing exactly what you need to do. Obviously, goals can all go all the way down to the buildings, the student, staff, etc. Those belong for the superintendent. So if those areas have goals, that he'll work with them as the CEO of the district to make sure that those goals align with what the board wants the district to be headed toward and what they want it to be doing. So the most important, up and down. And I believe that this is also counterbalance of a goal approach, but occasionally I'll have goals off in left field, and it's very time consuming and exhausting for people to try to do goals in different areas in different directions. So just from that there. And then the next slide, please.
Barb, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I thought as a board, don't we have a 3-year goals or something, right? Wasn't it mental health and that was our 3-year plan? Remember when we did that? We were in here and
District
we,
operational plan, which I thought was 1 year, right?
It's
One-
a, it's a 1
3
year,
years.
it was a 1 year thing.
the mental health and the, or am I
We
thinking
evaluate,
of the
yeah, we
wrong?
evaluate every year.
Okay, okay, I was thinking that was a 3-year.
Because remember, we did have financial stability,
Yeah.
and then we switched it because
Yeah.
we felt like, so we did that after
And that's
a
just a
year.
1 year?
Mhm.
Okay, all right, I was thinking it was
That's a
3.
good question.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. And just please keep interrupting me because I can't see all of you real well on the screen, so just do that. And thank you very much for asking the question. So in terms of evaluations, I'm only going to focus on the dues here for just a minute, but the idea is that we should agree on something. Now, I know a lot of you in your other lives outside the school board, you've either evaluated people or been evaluated. There's a lot of different processes. You do not have to use the process that we're suggesting with other goals in Facebook book, but we think it's helpful because board members and superintendents both seem to find it a common language. There's lots of ways you can do an evaluation. We just want you to agree on one so that Nate knows what to expect his first year in the district and then the next year and the next year. We do have to collaborate. You know, this is not a job for a subcommittee. Much like the superintendent search, every single board member fully participated in that because Nate reports to one board, not 7 board members. So you do need to work together. We don't want you to delegate something like the evaluation to a subcommittee because they'll bring the report back. You may not, as a board, in your whole, agree with the results. We do want the whole board to participate if you can. There'll be ratings and written feedback. Generally speaking, if you have a mid-year, it's way more informal, maybe December, January. The year-end summative evaluation is more formal, where the ratings and the rankings and that sort of thing do need to go in the personnel file because it is an opportunity to keep records of what's going. You should document what's going well in areas that maybe some improvement could be agreed upon. The 4th bullet down is not news. We just want you to speak with one voice as a board. Same thing with the evaluation. Now, you could evaluate Nate individually, of course, and then compile those results into a single report, whether you average the scores or make a note of the majority of scores for this, but one final report so that he knows where the direction is coming from the will of the board, instead of trying to please 7 individuals. That gets really, really tricky and very difficult. And then please allow time to do this. So many boards think this is, when they can just keep kicking the can down the road. You have so much on your plates. You probably are exhausted from the amount of work right now on your plate as a board member and superintendent. So schedule some time out. Maybe you have dates on the calendar, but do schedule a mid-year and actually put one on the calendar for next spring already, so everyone's committed to it. They know that they can show up. Allow a couple hours for the conversation. It's important enough that you want to make sure you're communicating. You cannot over-communicate with expectations. So do set aside some time to have that conversation. Are there any questions on do's and don'ts? Okay, next slide, please. So the goals you must have, again, that's sometimes what I do in the workshop is work on goals, but I think you've got a really great head start on this, so I'd love to do that. But it suggests that there's some elements you could use to support those goals, but for now, that's the big part of the job, and you've already got that done. So thank you. And then just schedule a move the year and schedule eventually for the end of the year one as well. That's the simple 3 steps that we ask you to follow. Next slide. Thank you. I always have to talk about the open meeting law. This is one of the very few times that you as the board can close a meeting. So you really cannot close a session, excuse me, a meeting for any purpose relative to your superintendent except the evaluation itself. That you can close a meeting for. But when you're discussing the goals for next year and identifying what's important or optimal goals, that should be done in a session. You can close it for an eval. And we encourage you to do that because in a closed session, obviously you still have to record it and that kind of thing, but you can have a much more frank conversation in a closed session with one another as well as the superintendent. There's one caveat to this, and that is that it's the superintendent's prerogative that they want it done in open meeting. So every once in a while, there's a superintendent that will, in writing for the school board, that the performance evaluation scheduled for so-and-so date is conducted in an open meeting, and you must actually follow their request. So you cannot close a meeting unless it's okay with it. So if they want it in the open, you do it in the open. Can anyone think of any reason why a superintendent might request the evaluation in open meeting?
You're cutting out a little bit.
Can anybody think of a reason that they would request to have it in an open meeting?
That they would. Transparency.
Yeah. Community trust.
Hiding something.
That the school board is hiding something.
Yeah, all of those are correct. If there's a request to do it in an open meeting, it's most often because relationships are broken down between the superintendent and the board to a point that they want things shared in the open, so staff or community or parents can hear what the board is saying, and the superintendent has a chance to respond in an open meeting. It's not a great sign if one wants it in an open meeting because it does indicate that they're not comfortable in a closed session and they want it in the open. So we encourage you to just talk. Don't let there be any surprises, good, bad, or other. Superintendent never be blindsided, whether it's open or closed, by your performance evaluation. They should understand how things are going and they're communicating regularly with you. If there's concerns, go to the board chair, having a chance to direct conversation with the superintendent about that, just to make sure that you don't have something 6 months down the road unexpectedly rearing its ugly head. So try to keep talking about it if there's something that's not as well as you'd like it to be done. And then the final reminder is this is information. So you have to group things to put in the personnel file when you're dealing with private data. So anything that is talked about in the closed session, you as board members handle confidential data all the time. I'm not at all worried about Byron, but just remember that this person's data, it does need to be handled accordingly. And also work with the HR people in your district, wherever that might be, to keep those records appropriately in the personal files. So those are the only 2 things I have on that one. Is there another slide? There you go. Thank you very much. The 3 C's, I say all of these are really important. I don't even know which one might be more important than the other, but this communication, clarity, and collaboration really are the bottom line. That's the process. overview. So I think that's the last slide, unless there's one for questions. So I'll pause for a minute and see if you do have any questions on the presentation.
I do have a question. So you were cutting out a little bit, and I just want to repeat something to make sure that I heard it the right way. So based on what you shared about MSBA's recommendation, I understood that majority of the evaluations are done at the closed sessions, and the open sessions are only done if there is like a special need to make it public because there is some misalignment between the board and the superintendent. Is that the right assessment?
Correct, correct.
Thank
In
you.
5 years, I've only seen one superintendent request it be done in an open meeting. And it was because the relationship had deteriorated to the point that they couldn't talk to each other. And they wanted to air dirty laundry and ability to make sure that the community got to see that there was disagreement between the superintendent and the school board. But 99.9% of the time, people get going to the closed session instead.
Thank you.
Was that Byron?
So, Barb, is that, I think the last eval we did was its own meeting, but is that part of a meeting where we close the meeting, do the evaluation, open the meeting, and continue the agenda?
You know what? I didn't need to ask that question, but if you want to grab the book, look at page, I think it's page 7, and it's book talks about all of that.
Man, I'm good.
Most of the first 6 pages are just the rationale for doing evaluations, much of that just went through the evaluation part. But it talks about open number students, it talks about the meeting. You do have to open it in an open meeting. And then if you're going to go into closed session, you have to announce the purpose of it. And then you walk through, go into closed session, and you have to come back out of closed session. And you either resume the meeting and then you bring any business, or you come back into the open session to adjourn. You'll also note though, G at the bottom here, or F and G both. So the school board chair got to provide a summary of what happened in that closed session that is provided at the next open meeting. So these two, where a reasonable person can understand what happened in the closed session, but without giving a whole lot of detail. Usually it just shares, this is what we evaluated the superintendent on, these are the scores we gave, or you have an average score of exceeds or meets but doesn't meet, something like that. So it's pretty big. In the back of the book, there's also an appendix. In the appendix, there's an example of the board has together for a report. The most important thing is not forget report. Even if the next open meeting is a special meeting, it's still open. You still need to give the report. I did get asked one time, what if we have, a closed session and we come back into the open meeting and we adjourn, and then 5 minutes later we start a meeting to talk about something. Does it need to be that? That's the next open meeting. The answer is no. No board chair can do something in 5 minutes. So I'd say at least a day or 2 later, the next open meeting, we want to report out what happened in the closed session. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Other questions?
I have a question. For the end of the year eval, where we put together one final report, you mentioned to have enough time for us to do that. When do you recommend that we start to really focus on making sure we're on the right track to make sure that we have a final report ready at the end of the year?
Yeah, great question. Most boards do them twice. They do a mid-year in December or January, and then the next one in June. But what happens is rather than now out of the blue at your, being and going into closed session, most often the board chair will send out something 2 weeks before to all the board members. Hey, everybody, remember these are the quotes we agreed upon, these evaluate votes. Please, put your comments and score your rating and get it back to me. And there's usually a deadline a week or a week and a half later. And then the chair comes into that closed session to hand back to everybody the results of the board as it. So most people give about 2 weeks, maybe 3, for everybody to have their votes heard and shared with the board chair, who then consolidate it into something for the board to consider in that meeting.
So is that the chair who initiates this process, or?
Usually the chair will gather the information and compile it or create averages, however they decide to do it, and bring it back into the closed session. I haven't seen anyone other than the chair do it, except in very large districts. Sometimes the director of HR is the one collecting that information and tabulating. In a couple of districts, had a chair and vice chair do it together. But it is confidential information, so you do have to be careful who's collecting the data that is, scoring Nate. If you're using a 4-point scale, that's not public data, just anyone can compile. It needs to be someone who's a confidential employee or a board member or 2 board members gathering and creating maybe average scores and putting all the comments in there so people can read it. I
So,
don't know if I'm answering your questions, but please keep asking questions.
thank you. So, but to do that, we need to align on the goals first, right, for evaluation.
The goals are set.
We have already them,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. So we're going to do that next. I want to talk about measuring the goals that have been set for Nate, but I do want to talk briefly about something I saw in the plan that he sent me. I do want to mention the use of 360-degree views. Now, they're real common in the private sector, and you do see them occasionally in the public sector. Now, 360s, for someone who's not familiar with them, is that you survey people who work for the superintendent and ask them what they think of their performance. And you gather that information and include that in your report, correct? So 360-degree reviews, MSBA tends to say are not a good idea, and I'll give you a couple of reasons why. So we do not encourage those. Doesn't mean you can't do them, but best practice is to do them for 2 reasons. One, the board is the hired and the overseeing authority of the superintendent. And sometimes if you start looking for feedback from other people, you give the impression that you're sort of giving away your authority to do that because you need other people to tell you how you're doing or for you to evaluate it. But I want to acknowledge the awkwardness that no one on the board in Byron has been a superintendent. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Have any of you been a superintendent before?
No.
There's 2,500 board members in the state of Minnesota, and I know 2 that have been superintendents. So they've walked in those shoes, they know what the job entails. It's naturally awkward for lay people like me and like you to evaluate them because you don't know what their job is. So you feel you want to ask staff and administrators to tell you how you're doing. That can backfire. One, you're giving them authority to others, but 2, people tend to be polarizing on those reviews. So you've got people that hate, and it's an anonymous survey usually. So the stuff that comes in those surveys is not actually constructive. It's not information you could use as a board team to work toward moving business forward. It tends to be people with an axe to grind or people that think they're doing a fabulous job. So they're not really productive. That being said, we've seen 360s be used in 2 ways in a really good way. One is some superintendents like to send out a 360 to people who work for them as a professional development tool. They want to become a leader, so they want feedback from people about what can I improve on as a leader. So they might gather that data and use it to strengthen their own leadership journey. If they choose to share it with the board or not, that's completely up to them. But as a PD tool, some superintendents do like to do 360s. The other one that can be helpful, I think, is if you do culture and climate survey. And culture and climate surveys get to the heart of ultimately what is the superintendent's responsibility. They're not saying, hey everybody, let's see you create data. They're saying, hey everybody, rate the culture and climate in the district or in the buildings or whatever, because ultimately the superintendent's leadership style will influence. So they can influence that. I just want to give you a word of caution that sometimes they can backfire. And I do have a way for you to figure out how the superintendent is supposed to do everything. A good educational tool is going to be homework if you want to do it. So open up the book, turn to page 13 for starters. And 23. When you have time, school board members, I would say, please take a look, left column on every single page. So these are the 8 standards. Standard 1 is governance. Standard 2 is school district finance. So the list that we suffered. If you want to really understand the job of superintendent and how enormous it is, read every single element, the left column of what highly effective superintendent would do. So 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, 2A, 3B, 2C, etc. If you read that, you're going to walk away with a better understanding of what their job entails. So it's a good education to understand in the detail of what they have to do. But it's a lot of reading. So you know what I'm going to suggest, though, based on the goals that you've already adopted, take a look at possibly coming up with some agreements on elements that you could do to start right under the goals. So if I may, Nate had sent me the goals that we adopted. There were, let's see, 3, okay? So the first professional goal was to complete the input plan and create a strategic plan. And then there are action steps. Well, there's 2, 3, 4 action steps and 4 assessments under entry plan and strategic plan. So he's going to report to you what he's doing, because I think the assessment, whether what we would call evidence, indicators, or proof. You know, and if you look at the back of the book on page, it's 27. Yeah, right after page 27, A1, A2, and A3 is a list of evidence. And that's helpful because, and that's a very small list. There is far more than that, but that's just an example. Superintendents who can provide you with proof or evidence that they've done what they said they would do. What can sometimes be challenging for board members who still like, what does that mean? And how are we going to measure it? You know, if any of you are making some goals, you understand where we're coming from on this, but what does it mean? So what I would suggest, and it's up to you, but we can look at it. Plan and what would you think of using 1B as a measurement tool for that first goal? So 1B says goals and or strategic plan. And if you look at that, you can just copy and paste that one section out. If when the time comes, maybe if you're talking about it in the mid-year, but for sure the summative, if Nate has facilitated development of the school district's short and long-term measurable goals and aligns it with available resources with the school district's budget to accomplish those goals, that provides some kind of a roadmap or an agreement between the board and Nate about what we have to do to be rated a 4. Now, sometimes you get a shoulder score where 3 and 4 are close enough, or 2s and 3s, or 1s and 2s. If, though, you're using this 4-foot Likert scale, and it's pretty clear, in any effective superintendent, their goals are not developed. Well, he's already developed and approved them, so you know that he's not going to get a 1, sure. And then developing would be this, and the effective would be that, and highly effective is that. So that has helped some boards better understand how to score them. It's yes or no, because the problem that we run into, and I don't know if this is going to happen in the board or not, is sometimes the goals and measuring them feels very subjective. The problem with subjectivity is it's not fair to the superintendent or to other board members because you might be in all kinds of different areas about what something means, right? What does that mean? So under the first goal, you could put 1 and see if that gives you a way to fairly and objectively evaluate on that when the time comes. And then just 2 or 3 more comments. Is it okay hanging with me if I do that? Okay. The next goal that you adopted was strengthen resource and budget stability. Okay, strengthen resource and budget ability, and then there's, again, 3 action steps and 3 assessments. If you wanted, you could go to page 14. I think 2A, the development and maintenance, and they give you a roadmap to evaluating him on that. So if you read 2A, you know, a couple weeks before the evaluation, the board chair can send this out, and you as board members circle 1, 2, 3, or 4. Nate might want to be self-evaluation because that's really good. You will feed into the system. well. But 2A might be something that clarifies what you expect. And then maybe also 4A, if you turn the page to 16. 4A talks about facilities. So 4A, the element is called facilities. Nate wants to be highly effective. He ensures plan is in place and includes the current status of buildings and the need to improve facilities in the future with a projected plan and secure funding. So that's a little clearer than just saying facilities, right? It gives you something to shoot for as a superintendent and something to evaluate as the board. So maybe 2A and 4A. And I've got one more to suggest, and then I'm going to stop talking and turn it back over to the board to facilitate a conversation about what you want to do next. This is your plan, it's not mine. These are just ideas. But the third goal that you already identified was to create a district-wide staff development system with access, oversight, and alignment to priorities. So in that case, I looked at 16, which is way back on page 19. At the top of page 19, there is an element that says staff development, I think. Now, if you were in it, what is it current for? Nate would have to ensure a comprehensive staff development plan fit, and that it aligns with school district and school-specific goals and complies with the law. It ensures staff development program with school district-specific plan, goals, and priorities, and focus on increasing student achievement. That's still a lot of words, and it's still a little open to interpretation, but it's language, right? And language is squishy. So it's sometimes hard to know whether it fits that or not. But if you said the superintendent, there'd be no comprehensive school district staff development plan right there. Even if you really, really like Nate, you'd have to give him a 1 if that's the status, but I'm going to evaluate it. And if you really, really don't like Nate, he's doing what a highly effective superintendent does, you need to give him a 4. So what you and the elements can do is kind of remove emotion and remove personality from the evaluation process. So I'd recommend leaving those into the goals, but you don't have to do them. I'm going to stop talking and mute myself and listen to you all talk about it. You decide what we want to do moving forward or asking questions. Sound okay? All right, thank you.
So what questions do we have regarding what Bauer went over with not only the PowerPoint, but also the binder, book, manual?
I'm not really even sure where to begin. I don't know. I don't know what questions I have yet.
It looks a lot different than the evaluate that we did last year, so
Right.
this is all kind of,
So I just need to like,
this is
digest
good.
it.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
good.
I like that we have a point of reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have any questions. I have to relook at it in different eyes.
Yeah,
like
I
this.
need to like read it and highlight stuff.
So before January, will we as a board have an opportunity to align on those evaluation standards, right? Before we do the actual evaluation in the
Yes.
closed meeting, or well, before the closed meeting. Closed meeting is to talk about the outcomes of the evaluation, right?
That's correct.
So do we have those meetings, will they have to be, is it just an open working session, or how is this gonna happen?
Because that would have to be open meeting, typically it's been done via email. One person would be the point of contact to, here are the parameters, basically is what we've done. Here are the parameters, send me your feedback. I'll compile all of the feedback, but how, the question, right, is how do we determine what of this
Right.
results in that? And that would be an open meeting, correct? Because we're just discussing the parameters of the evaluation.
Yeah,
And what we want.
But do we put that on a work session?
Yeah, that could be part
yeah,
of our.
because
Yeah.
you're not taking any action or anything.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems like we have not used anything like this before, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So in thinking through that though, we would need to put it on the agenda for the December work session in order to complete it, to have the time to get it done, in
Yeah.
order for the feedback to be done in January. Whether that be the first meeting or the second weekend in January,
Right.
it's still gonna have to be compiled.
Well, I think
Are we giving measurements in January, or is that just at the end of the year?
Well, that was gonna be the part I would highlight from Barb's presentation, is that mid-year is less about looking at those elements and like going, we're at a 4 or a 3 or a 2 or a 1 now. And it's almost more like a status report or reactions, or continuing to zero in on which elements you're actually wanting to. I guess I would love to see elements as quick as possible, so that then as I'm putting things together, I can
Right.
keep it organized,
Yeah.
so that it makes it easier when we get to the end of it. But
So
Good.
January, we don't need to provide the grades just yet, right? We need to, by the January evaluation session, we need to just align on what exactly we're evaluating, right? And what are criteria for evaluation.
No, January is actually evaluating.
No, but Nate just said, right, it's gonna be more of Nate's report to
Oh,
us
gotcha,
of where
gotcha.
he thinks
End of
he
year.
is in comparison to those evaluation goals.
But I think the one thing I would say that's a little different than what you were talking about is what Jeremy, I think, was landing on was preferably in the December timeframe, you should arrive at these elements like Barb listed out, so that would help me organize information for you.
Right.
So you knew and I knew what we were all gonna look at eventually.
Yep. And Barb said a word that stuck out to me about the mid-year evaluation. It was conversation.
Yeah, okay.
So we want this to be a right interactive back and forth of, here's where I think I am, here's where we think you could, strong points, room for improvement on these to get to the end goals.
Yeah.
More informal.
Mhm.
I'm curious, just so, I mean, there's a lot of
There's a lot.
elements. So I'm trying to think out loud here a little bit. Would it be wise for us as a board to individually go through these, have one point of contact, Jeremy, I'm volunteering you,
Lucky.
and kind of going through and seeing, okay, so this is how I see it aligning with the goals, and these are the elements. And then you kind of look through and say, you know what, everybody chose this one, and kind of get a starting point, so
Yeah.
we don't spend 4 hours here.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't think we need to talk about every one of those items here, but this is back to the goals, right? So this is a comprehensive list for all of those 8 things that were on the superintendent column there, right? Or whatever, however many things were. But yes, via email makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, what you're saying is knowing what the goals are, going through all of these elements and identifying, hey, for goal 1, 1B might be one of the elements, but maybe Kelly says there are 3 other elements I found. But maybe Nadia looks at it and says, well, really 1B is the one for me, and David would go extra, right? He'd be like, here's these 15 elements that connect to that. But, yeah.
I guess I
Is
was
that what
just-
you were kind of saying?
Yeah, so like, for example, on goal number 2, 4A and 2A were the recommended ones. So it's like, well, I'm gonna look at those to see, but I might also think that there's other ones that align with that. And then if we have a few that everybody already agrees on, we can kind of narrow down a little bit, or at least start communication, so we're not all here. There's a lot of us, and we all can have different opinions, so I'm just trying to.
And I like what you're saying, because if everybody says 4A, then okay, we lock in 4A. But if 3 people say it's 6A and 2B, now we can have a discussion regarding these 2 instead of
Right.
this.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Barb, when we were doing the super search, we had these evaluation things, and it helped us like narrow down. Is there something more? Is there something like that well, like when we circled the things that we all liked, and then it went in, and it went in, yeah, like, and it was just like kind of easy, the questions. And I was just curious if there was something a little more, because this is a lot to process, and if we're looking at 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
That is a lot to process. So I think one of the things you could do, the short answer is no, there's not like a rubric to say. But on page 12, it's one page of the 8 elements. And individual elements. So that's sort of your one-stop shop.
Okay.
If you want to go through and say, okay, under governance, when I look at those 5 options, I kind of think that goals and strategic plans, what I would choose. And then you could flip that actual page and leave the verbiage under goals and strategic plan and see if it's what you want. But that's a nice overview. Now, one of the things that I would suggest, your end of the year is up to November 3rd, right? November 3rd. So try to keep it simple also for your first year. And I would say no more than maybe 5 or 6 total elements to evaluate NAET on come spring. Because it's a lot. It's like drinking fire hose your first year. It's been exacerbated in Byron because of the referendum. Very few new superintendents are tasked with the referendum. It's a little unusual, so he's already got a lot on his plate and hasn't had as much time perhaps to do some other things that we want him to do. So if you think about districts, everything matters. I want to be super clear that everything is important, right? You have high priorities in Byron Public Schools, and you know what those are. But then you also have higher ones, higher priorities. Ultimately, you're going to have the highest priority. And that high priorities are what your superintendent evaluation should focus on. The most immediate, most important priorities, at least for evaluation purposes. Now, NAET still has to do everything. So when I said, read elements of a highly effective superintendent, you're going to end up reading like 45 or 50 elements. He still has to do all of it. But you need to help him prioritize it by focusing on what's absolutely most important. And only pick 4 to 6. Well, yeah, I think I suggested 4. But if you start to have too many elements, you're going to burn out your superintendent, and it's all over the map. So you really want to know it down, if you can. And then next year, you build on ones maybe, but in a different way, or in different elements in the same standards. So these are meant to grow at NAET. It's just the simplicity of the elements versus, well, how do we think you did this year? Everyone's got opinions and there's no clear rubric. And we think the elements are pretty good rubric, but narrow it down.
And I think the only thing I would add, and this is absolutely going to come across as self-serving, but when I was teaching, I used rubrics like this to evaluate and grade all of the kids on everything. And what I really found was when I reduced the elements to the lowest number possible, it provided me with the greatest amount, me and the students with the greatest amount of clarity. And that as I added elements, it just ended up muddying the waters. And so anyway, I'm more just trying to, at least from my experience using rubrics like this with lots of kids, just trying to reinforce what Barb was trying to say, recognizing that it means it's less elements for me to focus on eventually.
I was honestly leaning towards just adopting what Barb just recommended, because to keep it simple and for us as kind of going through this process first time, it's a nice and achievable framework.
Okay.
I think the big question is just deciding how you wanted to collect everybody's input, and then what the timeline for that would be.
Maybe we start with the recommendation, and then whoever wants to add, drop anything can, reply to you.
Could we, at our next meeting, have it on the agenda where we're checking in, where I'm gonna say, okay, we have 7 and we need to narrow it down to 4. I'll be sending you all an email with the 7 ranked in order. I mean, should we do that where it's, I'm just brainstorming of what makes the most sense.
that's your plan, but do you want any additional data by? If you're gonna have it on the agenda for next week and you want 7?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We have 2 weeks, Dave. You don't have anything else to do?
Well, you don't want to,
It's getting late.
you don't want to give 2 weeks because he's still got
Right,
to compile
1 week
data.
for us
You gotta
to-
go less than 2 weeks to actually, to give him time to do that too, so.
Yeah.
So maybe like 1 week for us to email you with additional suggestions beyond the 4, or a recommendation to remove any of the 4, and then a week for you to compile.
So,
I, for one, would also be, if you're worried about the time crunch, I would also be comfortable with if this ended up going into like the December work session. You know, recognizing that you kind of lose 1 week there because of Thanksgiving and stuff, and nobody should be working on this stuff for Thanksgiving, but anyway, if you're worried about doing under the gun because Nate's all nervous, that's not going to happen.
When's the truth in taxation? Because I don't want it on that sound.
And I've been teaching Sean how to be extra boring for it as well.
now, in fairness, we have not had one delivered by now. This could be the most thrilling and
You could dress up in a costume or
enthusiastic.
something.
You've seen the teams he cheers for,
Would you-
right? You lost hope.
Could you use an accent?
Accent?
Yeah, like British, if you really
Oh,
like.
Or we should all have signs of different accents, and in the middle of the presentation, we open up.
I'm with
And
him.
you
I
have
don't want
to
to get
choose.
canceled for, you know,
We could close that.
offending cultures and things.
Right.
Boy.
So
Good
in,
response.
let me ask this, in the next week, could everybody send me their 4 elements?
Mhm.
So each person would be just sending me 4.
Okay.
That's feasible.
I mean, oh.
Well, it's elements
I-
beyond the 4, I think, is what we were talking about.
I was
right?
gonna say, because I know that we have our 1, 2, 3, I have 4 recommendations here, but I guess looking outside of those
Okay. So
recommendations.
the 4 you're talking about, 1B, 2A, 4A, 6A? That's what I recommended?
I had 2B.
Yeah, 2D.
Did I write that down wrong?
Did you have 2A?
I probably wrote it down wrong.
What were they again?
I don't know.
I
Is it
said-
2A or
Barb, do you
2B?
remember what they were? I apparently.
The
Roll
elements.
number
I have
1.
1B, 2A. 1B,
Yeah, I had 1B for the first goal.
Yep.
Oh,
For the second goal, I had 2A and 4A.
and 6A.
And for the third goal, I had 6.
6A.
So I think anything outside of those recommendations, and then also it might be wise if you feel those, or one of those should not be used,
Mhm.
maybe identifying that. So
Yeah, can everybody,
And so one clarification for the second objective. So there are 2 items recommended there, 2A and 4A. Would you recommend, Barb, that we evaluate based on those 2 items? Or would it be a recommendation that we somehow combine them, you know, and then use evaluation that, like, according to a combined rubric?
Great question. Most people leave it as is and just do separate one.
Okay, thank you.
I hear what you're saying though, because there is definitely overlap. When you read the elements, you know, A, B, C, and D, some of the language in each of the elements applies to the other one because, you know, finance has 6 elements. And there's a lot of finance that is really priority for you this year, but a lot of them kind of bleed into the other ones. But if it's something that you want to do or to leave, without trying to rewrite them, you certainly could rewrite them if you wanted to. But you don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you what not to do as we're sort of going to a close here is I had a district that was all written with this book. They were so proud of this book, the superintendent evaluation. So I met with them to talk about what they were doing. Every year, they evaluated the superintendent, on every health element,
Yeah.
like 45 or 50 elements, right? That poor superintendent didn't know where to focus because everything was important and everything was important, nothing's the most important. So it was like a 5-hour evaluation, just trying to evaluate on every single little element. So please don't do that. That's why we want to say winnow it down, prioritize it for evaluation purposes, knowing he still needs to do all of those things. But from an evaluation perspective, please point to him in the direction that matters most in the district right now, between now and the end of June. Okay? Was this helpful? I know it's hard to not be there in person. I miss being there in person with everybody, but was this useful or a good use of your time to me?
Very helpful, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, I have nothing further unless you have any more questions for me. I know you will have some more business, so I can log off, but I'll give you one more chance to ask me if there's something I can help you with.
No.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barb.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. I cannot wait till tomorrow night for the next day when I get to hear how it went in Byron, but I'm very excited with you and the rest. So I'll be thinking of you. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for visiting with me tonight. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll review our seniority list, starting with the certified staff.
Just so you know, with these seniority lists, there's all sorts of things in both these contracts that are tied to the individual's position on the seniority list. And so we have gone through with both of the units, the supervisors and each individual employee, just to verify people's placement. It's important to know one of the, how do I call it, points of controversy at times can be this column C, because that's really the column that ranks everybody. And there's a difference between the number of years somebody has worked in the district sometimes and the number of seniority years, meaning the years that they've given to the district. So for example, if you were hired in, I'm just going to do easy math, the year 2000, right? This would be your 25th year. But if you took like a long-term leave, let's say to care for a child 4 different times, your seniority years would actually be 21 instead of 25. And so because over the past few years, this list and the job of maintaining the list has shifted individuals a couple of different times, there were a few errors, but we have ironed out those errors and notified the applicable employees. So we do feel really good that this is the list that we can depend on and move forward with, both in terms of the certified staff, which is the teaching list, and also the principals list.
Any questions or discussion on seniority lists?
And all of those changes have been reviewed with the staff and their.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll move into action items. Action Form A from the MSHSL resolutions.
Yes, and both of these forms, I'm trying to get this other one out. These, smiles. These things end up being approved by, or these forms end up being approved annually by districts in the State High School League. And they are tied to being able to ask for grants, apply for grants, and then for the grant funding that assists in providing additional opportunities, whether those potentially be grants that help fund activities in athletics, provide workshops, all that sort of stuff. So it's basically, it's part of being in the league. You agreed to that we sign these forms, and then we're granting the State High School League the authority to operate on our behalf in terms of searching for these grants and distributing the applicable funds. So.
Okay, we should do them separately, correct?
Yes.
Since they are listed separately. Carrie, you want to read the whereases?
Yep, whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide support for Minnesota's high school youth to participate in athletes and fine arts. Whereas the governing board of Byron Public Schools, District 531 recognizes the value of student participation in extracurricular activities, and whereas the MSHSL, I said that good, Foundation is offering grants and funding to assist schools in the recognizing, promoting, and funding extracurricular participation by high school students in athletic and fine arts programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of Byron Public Schools, District 531, supports the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation from Form A grant to offset student activity fees.
Okay, any questions or discussion on this resolution? Would entertain a motion?
I make a motion to accept the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. That's a resolution, so a roll call vote, please.
Lisa?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Nadia?
Aye.
And Carrie, aye. And motion passes.
And then on the Form B resolution?
Whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide support for Minnesota's high school youth to participate in athletics and fine arts. Whereas the governing board of Byron Public Schools recognizes the value of student participation in extracurricular activities, and whereas the MSHSL Foundation is offering grants and funding to assist schools to provide seminars, training opportunities, or support for specific school functions for students, faculty members, officials, and others who are involved in athletic and fine arts programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of Byron Public Schools supports the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League for a Form B grant.
Any questions or discussion on Form B? Would look for a motion on Form B.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
David?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Nadia?
Aye.
Carrie, aye. And then she's absent. Oh, yeah, sorry. Jeremy.
All right, recap of the listening session.
How was it, Jeremy?
It was amazing. We had no visitors this evening for the listening session, which brings us to our final item on
I make a
the
motion to adjourn.
motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, we are adjourned.
Nice.